So earlier in the week, I spoke to Karel Lannoo, who is the CEO of the Brussels-based Centre for European Policy Studies. Now, he very much believes both the UK and the EU will lose out if that different track Emma was talking about is taken. Karel and I started by talking about London's economic standing, as he describes it, the New York of Europe.
Exactly, that's what it is today. It's the same like what Wall Street is for the US and like what Hong Kong is for a large part of China. And it has acquired its status over the last 20 to 25 years, but it's basically the financial center, the business center, the most important business capital in Europe.
And so what is your view then if the UK was to make the decision to leave the European Union? What would be your projections almost for what could happen?
I think they will lose a lot. They don't accept this for the time being, but they just do not sufficiently realize that the status they have acquired today is closely related to basically freedoms which we have in the single market, and these freedoms are the possibility, if you are established in one place in the EU, you can do business all over the EU, and they do this for financial services, for business services, but for a whole reason of activities from London. The moment they leave the EU, and if they were to decide to do so, that would be finished from one day to the next. So meaning you have to be in the EU to have this, what they call the single passport, this passporting, the single license. Once you're outside the EU, you lose that possibility, meaning the centralization of business activities, which we have seen in London over the last 20-25 years, which have gone in parallel with the achievement of the single market, will again fragment over different places in Europe, or we will see another main financial center emerging in Europe. That could be Paris, that could be Frankfurt, it could be other places. But that, of course, remains to be seen.
So do you believe that business people in the city and that, well, frankly, anyone who was to vote in this referendum, that they're understanding these potential ramifications or what you believe would be the ramifications?
From the discussions I've got in London in conferences and debates with people, only a few experts understand this, but many people in the city do not sufficiently appreciate this. I think, for example, people within American banks, within fund management industry may understand it, but the broader public, first of all, doesn't understand it. Many people, for example, in the hedge fund industry in London, do not want to appreciate it as such. They see just simply more and more regulation coming from Brussels rather than seeing these liberties or these freedoms to provide services coming from Brussels. But I think also a big part of the business community in the UK at large doesn't see that sufficiently.
What do you think? Well, much is made about what David Cameron has to do. He's trying to basically renegotiate Britain's position within the EU. Financially speaking, economically speaking, business speaking, what do you think he has to try to get from Brussels if the UK stays in a reformed EU?
Basically, what we've seen is what is on the table is there were about 4 questions which Cameron has asked to the EU. So 4 specific concessions from the EU. We have seen a draft response to these concessions from the EU. What we need to see is a kind of a political, a diplomatic response from the EU to these questions. But some of these questions are difficult and may imply concessions which go too far for other member states, or concessions which raise precedents for other member states, or concessions which could unravel this single market which we in the EU have been for a long time proud of. And that is the problem. I mean, they are asking to some extent things which are irreconcilable. If I think about this word ever closer union, which Britain or the British government does not longer want to have in the EU treaty, they want this, and at the same time they want more single market. They want to have even more possibility to do business from London, from the UK, in the EU through this strengthening of the single market for services. But on the other hand, they don't want more closer union, which I do not understand.
Just very quickly, effect on currencies. Obviously, the euro's been through a lot of weakness in the last few years, but the pound is traditionally a very strong currency. Again, if the UK decouples like that, what could be the potential effect on the pound?
Yeah, first of all, the pound has not always been a strong currency. The pound, for example, in 2008, 2009 was a weak currency, was at par with the euro, has strengthened only in the last 2 years with the strength of the UK economy. what we've seen over the last weeks again is that because of the uncertainty of a possible Brexit, the currency has started to decline again. So it's already a kind of a sign from the markets that the markets think it wouldn't be a good thing for the UK to leave the EU.
Karel Lannoo, pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for your time.